I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the South East Nation, the Malakadee people of the Yuin River, and the Liliquani people of the Far South. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Tonight we have in attendance Deputy Mayor Thorpe, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Jessup, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Gibson, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Burgess and Councillor Rozek. Would you like to introduce your staff, please?
Sure. Here tonight we've got our General Counsel Matthew Grimsey, Director of Community and Place Lyle Ground, Director of Infrastructure and Assets Frank Chen, Director of People and Corporate Patty Johnson, and we've got our support staff, Innovation and Technology Project Officer Connor Watson and Executive Assistant Olga Barth.
Thank you very much. There's no apologies tonight, there's no leave of absence and there's no absent. Councillors, do you wish to declare any interest in any of tonight's agenda items? No, that's a no. There's no planning, so we're straight into general reports. So report number 15.023/25, the adoption of the Yuin Valley Council Annual Plan 2025 to 2026. I'll refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Jessup and a seconder, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Jessup, would you like to?
Not this point.
Okay. Do I have any councillors that would like to?
Sure.
Yes.
I think we've had a lot of consultation on this, and it's overall a really good document and good direction, focusing on streamlining systems, community-centred and place-based planning, the essentials of asset renewal, some interesting directions with waste management. So in general terms, I'm very happy with it. I had a question about economic development, just the meaning of the description there. This means leveraging its core activities of land use, planning, compliance, enforcement management and asset management activities to promote and support sustainable economic development. I was wondering whether...
So,
elaborate on that.
Yeah, a good example of that, probably the primary case, is making our planning, compliance, etc. systems as frictionless as possible for business. So what business need is certainty. We want to be pro-business and make it as easy as possible for someone to start a small business on their rural block of land or come to Huonville and understand what they need to do to convert use, etc., etc. So just that primary thing, primary obligation of council to support business is through that smoothing the way. Yep.
I thought that's what it was saying. I had 2 points around specific points around the strategic goals. In strategic goal 3, it's got a point about building climate smart communities, which was the only place in the document that I could see any sort of reference to what I see as actually quite an important issue of encouraging preparedness for bushfire and flood. I guess that is covered in that area, or would it be sensible to actually annotate, add what those things are?
So sorry, to expand on what the outputs are?
Well, I just feel like, as the climate changes, we're more and more vulnerable and we should be more and more prepared and doing work on it. And
yep.
I'd like to see that sort of coming into these sorts of documents. So.
Yeah, that to me, and the director might want to speak to this as well, but that particular working to build community understanding and resilience towards climate change, that empowerment is part of our livability strategy and the resilience work that we're doing. So it, as a particular output, to me, does sit squarely in that in this strategic goal number 3. There is a significant body of work because obviously now, as we move to an output-focused annual plan, underlying all of these are operational work plans for the units. So there's a significant body of work on that one particular one, and it does cut across departments led by the climate change unit, but it's a contribution of all of council in supporting that really resilience of community. I don't know, do you want to add a lot?
100% correct. What I'll add is that some of the work we've started doing now with the recent appointment of our Principal of Climate is actually to have, and you'll see it in the Tasmanian planning policies, the draft Tasmanian planning policies, they have a climate lens that cuts across all those different facets in the annual plan. So as a structure for the annual plan, we'll be looking to sort of embed climate thinking and responsiveness across all the functions of council. And you'll see that in the next annual plan and how we do that. But yes, Lockie's right. We have a work plan that underpins the annual plan. So the annual plan is a high-level statement around we want to have those climate-smart communities, but in that are different facets that we'll be addressing, which is that resilience building, that understanding of what adaptation means for that local community. Again, all framed by the livability framework, which is being place-focused. So looking at that place and how that local context in those different facets, being resilience, emergency response, and adaptation, climate adaptation. So that's the approach we're taking. So there's a bit of building house and a bit of sort of, working within that sort of broad statement with the work plan.
So that all is, it doesn't need any more detail at this level.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, we've thought about this long and hard, and you're right. I mean, climate change is that cross-cutting issue everywhere. So we've not sort of singled it out and gone, strategic goal 1 is climate change, and just done that description that it does cut across everything, which may be at the heart of what you're talking about. But I think operationally, it's in the way that we've put it together at the moment, it makes sense, and it aligns the work plans and what we're resourced to deliver on.
I think it's embedded into decision making.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but the wording maybe for next year could change because we will have the new officer and maybe then
I feel a responsibility, I guess, to our communities to do whatever we can to make sure people are prepared. And I mean, even what we're talking about in terms of strategic planning, which I think is fantastic.
Yep.
That's taking all of that into account. But it's not working with communities as they are and where they are now, and seeing what we can do to, reduce fire loads, increase buffers, make sure that people have plans, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll just say in that, so that what you spoke about there is that sort of emergency response space, and then so that cuts across your statement there around the resilience building and the emergency response. So we've just recently appointed a resilience officer now, so we'll be getting into those communities. We have, again, the annual plan is a fairly high-level document saying our intent. We've got a work plan in terms of engaging with those communities, and again, it will be couched with being place-focused, so not dealing with that in isolation. So if we're working on a structure plan in a particular area, we're also looking at those components that might not necessarily be within a structure plan per se, but we sort of package it all together so there's a bit of integration in terms of how we deal with things rather than working in silos. So that's the plan. But point taken, and I think you'll see there'll be a bit of maturity in the next annual plan as we progress the livability framework and the sort of overarching climate sort of lens that we put on things.
I mean, I think the place-based approach is absolutely the right way to go.
And just to be quick and clear, but for us, the climate change focus is on adaptation. So, we do, try to reduce emissions through our operations where it makes financial sense to do it. But our primary focus is in adaptation, and in a big way, that is awareness of risk and helping people, current people, as well as planning for the future, but helping people through that emergency management and resilience work to get prepared in their own space. So that's a big part. That emergency stuff is a huge part of that workload.
Okay, great, thanks. I think that was all I had.
yes.
Yeah, thank you. I've got just a couple of comments and questions. So I suppose just in the indicator stuff, the business indicators, I was a little bit confused if that was the business community or if it was council's business, but it's been confirmed by the director that it's our council operational business. So maybe that's a wording change that we can make, that we're not monitoring the broader business community, which might not be a bad thing to do, just by the way, as we do influence them with our approvals and things like that. And I think and again, I'm not going to die in a ditch over this, but I don't think we should have 2.4.1.1, which is provide oversight and monitoring to the Southern Employment Training Networks. We know from the last meeting that they have cut their ties with us, and we're not including any of the income in our financials. So I'm not sure that we should be saying we're monitoring, because we're not. We have no legal or statutory obligation, and I believe we're totally cut free of any obligation to that grant.
So we're to be clear, we're cutting ties. So there's the intent to change. It's likely that we'll still be tied into the new financial year. So it won't be. We're trying.
Move that motion last couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but there's quite a lot of stuff on their side to get prepared and to go through with Jobs Tasmania. So I'm.
So we're still in the game.
Yeah.
We're still in the game, and I think we'll have to close that out. It'll be closed out in the first quarter, and we can then provide some, how that transition has actually occurred.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Page 24, just on the figures. I note there was a significant uptick in other income, 190,000 to 745, but I believe most of that's the medical grant that we got. I think is Paddy's nodding her head in the background.
Sorry, what?
Page 24 of the document, which is page 36 of our.
Numbering 36.
Page 36 of the.
Sure. Yep.
I'm just for those at home who are reading the documents, because they've printed them all off to look at them, I'm sure. But in the financial statements there's a significant uptick in other income, but I believe that's the 500,000 that we got for the rural beds. And it's a great outcome that we have achieved that. And I know the medical centres are very passionate to people, but as a council group, I think we've got to ensure that they're as sustainable as possible, so all ratepayers aren't funding medical services. But that said, we also fund childcare services for people who live in Huonville, so it's a pretty pro quo. But the more of those grants we can win, the better. So congratulations to the staff. But I think they're still very expensive things to run, and I think we need to keep an eye on the costs, that they're not getting more expensive unnecessarily. But
It's not easy work, that one.
no. Well, any health service. I was at the budget briefing where I was watching the Premier pouring large sums of money into a big black hole called the hospitals, and they're very, very expensive things to run. But look, I know staff are doing their best to keep them. So that was about 500,000 we got out of the state government.
And that also gives that next level on encouraging doctors to come down to that area as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and provides really valuable for I think it's funding the regional health beds, isn't it, that money's for. So it's a really important thing for
Correct.
the people.
And ultimately, it's actually it's part of the state health system. These are rural hospital state beds in regional areas, which is better outcomes for patients and their families, and also through the negotiations and the deal that we have done, which is for 5 years. So we gave the community some consistency and confidence that we'd still be there through that time. But it demonstrates it's actually a cost-effective way to do it. We're saving ambulance trips to Hobart for things that are from relatively minor, but also we're having people transferred back out of hospital to recuperate in a hospital bed, albeit in the Huon, closer to their family. So it's a great outcome.
Absolutely.
And it's things that we were trying to do, but we were having to fund it ourselves. So it's it's great that we finally got the state to meet us.
And look, and I think, to be honest, if given that we've got a large rate increase, if you asked us, should we fund that, I'm not sure what the discussion around the table would be. So making sure that the state's very happy to dump jobs onto us, but we've got to make sure they pay for what they should be paying for. So, and yeah, well done to Minister Patricia for coming to the party with that and her department.
Very helpful.
Yeah. So the other question I had was just trying to get my head around the asset valuation, which is somewhere after page 24. So that's gone up from, the total assets that we manage went up from $306 million dollars to $339 million roughly. So that $30-odd million increase, hopefully you haven't been burning the corporate credit card buying $30 million worth of assets. So I'm assuming it's revaluation. Is that revaluation across the board, or are we revaluating pockets of assets? So every year we're going to get a big jump of this sort of scale, or is this just an averaged increase?
I'll come through to. Yep. Well, I think a lot of it was bridges, and we talked about that, didn't we? Yeah.
So we do have a regular asset revaluation or recurring, because we revaluate major asset portfolio once a year. Last year we did transport assets, which you can imagine that's the biggest chunk of our assets. And the biggest increase was due to the increased cost of bridge replacement. And we have seen 20% per year increase over 2 years. That's 40%. And when you add this such huge percentage of increase to a large asset portfolio, that's where the 36 million mainly come from. And we don't expect to see this become a thing every year, because first, we revalue different asset portfolio each year. Secondly, I'm hoping with the inflations and everything comes to the end, and we wouldn't see such price hike in the following year. But still, we have seen significant cost increase in labor cost, material cost, particularly in the construction industry, well be above CPI level.
So what's our asset class that we're revaluing this year?
Building asset. Next financial year, building asset.
Yeah, they're coming. So that we've got less of those, so the increase will be less. So I suppose things like stormwater and road assets are our big increases, or so is this going to be cyclic, or are we going to get every 3 years we're going to jump by 30 million or something out of the blue?
Can I
Patty, can you jump in?
just add from an accounting perspective, there's actually two areas that affect the asset. So there is individual revaluations, as Frank was saying, that's where we get somebody to come and value our assets. But then there's an indexation process that occurs. So every year on those assets that are not particularly revalued, we have to look at that and see what the replacement value of that asset may be. And we use that via cost of materials or what the like assets being sold in the market. And we need to be able to report that accordingly to the Tasmanian Audit Office when we get audited. So we make sure that our accounts are true and fair. And so you don't normally, unless there's a big change in some assets, or there's a cost proponent that has gone significantly up, you may not see the big, huge falls and troughs that you're talking about. It may be a bit more evened out, but the indexation is an estimate, and that's what we do to make sure that our accounts are true and fair.
So we're revaluing our whole asset portfolio by an index. Yeah, cool. That's good. And the last question, Mayor, because I know we don't want to be here all night. From memory, the long-term financial plan last year had us moving into surplus this year. Having read the document, I know that we're not moving into surplus this year, and I know we've talked about it a little bit in workshops. But just for the general interest of the community, can you just sort of say what are the biggest unpredictable things that we didn't know were going to happen and have gone from $100,000 surplus to a $500 or something $1,000 deficit this year?
As we did discuss, it is around those indexation of assets and subsequent depreciation. We have used examples of, the whole cake and pieces of cake, and if you use a certain amount of it, then at the end of a period you have no cake. So the depreciation is what we're adding back to ensure that we're always got that asset viable and at that level that we need it to be to service the community. So because those costs of those assets have increased through indexation revaluation, depreciation has gone up accordingly. And also we're going through an enterprise agreement bargaining at the moment, and we're looking at the cost of having our employees, obviously. So that also goes up with a 0.5% increase in superannuation again this year. So they're our two major really cost drivers in our profit and loss statement. So they're really the movement from last year to this year, because we don't necessarily can forecast. We don't have that crystal ball, as you know. We do the best we can, and we've worked really, really hard to bring us back into surplus as soon as we can, with minimising those rate increases as well.
Because staffing is about 50%, isn't it, roughly, of our total budget? So the superannuation is going to be 0.5% on $20 million or something. Yeah.
I actually have some graphs that I've been working on where about 45% of our total expenditure, with the next one being 19%, which is depreciation. So they're our two highest cost drivers.
Yes, I note depreciation's gone up 700, but our wages costs are going to go up significantly more, and that's not because we've put on a whole heap of new staff. That's because we're going to have to pay our staff more, which is fair enough.
And I think we had our income wasn't the same for waste as we had a downturn, didn't we?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
waste is down, interest is down. Yeah.
The key drivers are what
Yep.
Patty's just elaborated on.
Yep.
And just on your point around, the community interest in this, the team are working on, Patty's team are working on some communications and some simplification of what depreciation actually means, how this is all working, what's gone up, etc., so that hopefully we can put it in simple terms and build some community understanding of the challenges that we've got and how we're just trying to manage a sustainable budget into the future.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Robertson.
So it's clear this annual plan is a high-level document, but I think it's our duty to take care of the little things too. Our community has real concerns, and they're often the smaller interactions with council. And we've been hearing a lot of conversation and having a lot of community interaction over the past few weeks with halls. But if I cast my mind back over the past few months, little things like the community grants at $1,000 each, and I think they weren't fully expended, and the NRN grants that we've seen for a couple of years in a row, we have trouble fully spending. I'd love to see triple the amount of applications for those to encourage us to increase the size of the bucket and get more output in that area. So I looked through the document with a critical view to see if the detail was there too. And the comment I'd make is that I'm encouraged by some statements. One is optimise sports, marina and building facilities to meet both current and future community needs. It's general, but it recognises that detail that matters to our community in their day-to-day interactions. And the second one, implement comprehensive weed and biosecurity management. So that builds my comfort that it's not just glossy and high level. There's thought through into the detail and delivery on that. So thanks for the comprehensive work.
Do I have any other? No? Councillor Jessup? To close?
Happy to close, Mayor. Look, I think increasing rates is never something that any of us want to do. But I do know over the last couple of years I've had more feedback around improved services and, just reflecting back over last year, I should say at last, but that's probably a bit unfair, but we got the Port Huron pool back up and running and that's such a improved community asset, and I know it was a journey for everybody involved to do that. We've got money in here to do some work on the Huronville pool. There's some major road. There's $2.5 million worth of new road infrastructure. One is a Kingfish Beach, which obviously has been a bane for this council for many years, and the Mary Street safety improvement. So I think there's a good balance between moving forward, some preliminary work on the childcare centre, which congratulations to the Mayor for the promise that we got out of Minister Collins for $5 million to do some more work on that. So there's some really positive things moving forward, but and I know we did debate long and hard over fees and charges, which we've kept reasonably static, and rates. So I think there's a balance here that will see us having another successful year next year. So I commend the motion to the council.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then I'll put that forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all, councillors. The motion is carried. Thank you, guys. Report number 16.010/25, adoption of the long-term financial plan. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Robertson, and a seconder. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Robertson, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yeah, look, this is the part of the picture where we really look at what those rate increases mean over time. And if I think back a few years, I think back to a really significant double-figure percentage rate increase, which is pretty awful for a lot of people, but that was a decision, I think, wisely taken by the council at that time. And I'm mindful that when you are setting budgets, but also the longer term financial plans, you can be conservative in that and a little bit pessimistic on your outlooks and very careful. That causes some problems if you're keeping assets too constrained. You can be overly optimistic. You can rely on bonuses. You can be a little naive in some of your assumptions and so forth. And so the task of finding the sweet spot where those two approaches are balanced is really difficult. And I almost laughed, sorry, it's really serious stuff, but when you look at some of the numbers and there are figures ending in 000 or four, lots of zeros, very round figures, and then there are other figures that are going to the exact dollar amount, you can see the complexity of the process and the thinking that's gone into this. And we know that there are lots of issues out there that may vary from the sweet spot we're trying to find. I guess in the discussions, we've had really comprehensive discussions over the past few months as councillors and with staff. We've explored a lot of that, and I appreciate those discussions and how they've explored councillors' risk appetite for balancing those figures. And I know that staff are aware of the will of councillors to get those rate increases down as soon as possible. So I guess I'm fairly optimistic about the plan. That's my sense, and we may be able to do better in time, but I think it's pitched at the right point for now. Thank you.
Do I have any other councillor questions or comment? Yes, councillor Burgess?
I'd just like to comment, thank you, Mayor. You can see where the cash flow from the investment activities by adopting this plan, which I know must be done. It's a plan that changes every year, and this year we've been given the option, not the option, I suppose it's, we need to adopt it, the fact that they're going to spend $10 million out of our reserve. I've always thought that reserve is there to be used, and it's good to see that it's going to be used. I only have one little concern, that after 5 years, we stop spending that and it starts to build back up. The fact that we're going to stop spending at that time, does that mean that we've caught up and, well, there's a feeling that we're going to have the right amount of plant and equipment that we need? What's the main thinking behind the fact that it's going to stop and going to build back up again?
Okay, I might go through to them. Yes.
The increase towards the end of those 5 years are around some of those larger infrastructure renewals that we're going to have to fund further out. If we had a longer than a 10-year forecast, you'd see then it probably go up a little bit more and then start to travel off again as we invest in those assets to bring them back to where they need to be. It's just 10 years is quite a short time, and we do have quite a young profile of some of those larger assets, but that is why we're building up effectively it's depreciation on those assets. So depreciation is non-cash, sorry. So therefore you'll see that we do have the build up of that cash, so that when it's time to renew them, we'll have the money to then spend again.
Thank you. Do I have any other? No, councillor. Oh, sorry, councillor Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some good consultation on this, and I think we're striking a pretty good balance. It'd be nice to spend more, of course, but then and improve community services and infrastructure. But the flip side is the rate, so it's all about striking a balance, and I think we are. I'm comfortable with going into surplus in a few years. I guess the only other thing for the community to be aware of is the decrease in federal assistance grants, which I was alerted to when we went to the Local Government Association conference, which is decreased in real terms from 6 to 5%, which sort of and local government really carries the can in terms of dealing with a lot of infrastructure, and I think if people want to complain about rates rise, they should be complaining to the federal government and putting local government on a stronger financial footing, with grants that are not federal assistance grants, which are not pegged to any particular project. They're just funding what council knows are the best things to fund, because we're the people on the ground who know what our communities need. Yeah. That's all I was going to say.
Okay, thank you. Don't have any other. Do you want to close? You're right? Okay. Well, if that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Report number 16.011/25, adoption of the 25-26 budget estimates and rates and charges. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Collins, Armstrong, and a seconder, and a councillor Gibson. Do you wish to open with that, councillor Armstrong? Okay, no problems. Does anyone else wish to speak to this?
Mayor, just briefly, as I said earlier, none of us like increasing rates. But if people get the chance to read the document, we are taking on some fairly major, road sealing programs and things. There's $3 million worth of road sealing. I know everybody in the Huon Valley would like to have their road sealed, but that's never going to happen, and it's never going to be possible. I think it is fair to say that we went through a pretty rigorous process, and councillors were asked to put up budget ideas, and staff were put up budget ideas, and then Paddy just took out the knife and cut us all off at the knees and said, "You're not having anything." It's certainly not a wasteful budget by any means, and I think we did. There was a number of pet projects that people would have liked to have got up that did not get past the keeper, so to speak. So, there are some long-term pet projects that we've got, like FOGO and stuff, that hopefully at the point when it's economically viable to do that, we'll be able to do some more work and things like that. So we haven't forgotten all the things that we'd like to do. It's just we could put up the rates by 8 or 9% and do a lot more, but I don't think that would be very fair on a community that's struggling financially.
Strategic land use planning as a major investment that you're making ongoing.
And absolutely, I was going to say that there's two ways to raise our revenue. One is to increase the percentage, but also the other way is to actually have more houses paying rates. And I'm certainly been a great driver for better land use where it needs to be had, and I know we've got 3 major projects on the go at the moment. One is out the back of Huonville, one's a Signet plan, and one's looking at densification of certain areas. All of that will bring more money into the kitty, but unfortunately that's
Also more
a
expensive.
year, more expensive, but it's also a couple of years away as well. But look, I think we're striking a balance in this between what we'd like to do and what we can do and what the community needs us to do, I think.
Thank you. Yes, councillor O'Neill?
Just a comment, point of view. Just note that we've got 40K to spend on expert reports into quarry rehabilitation. I don't really understand that myself. I get that, but where possible, and it might be a minority point of view on my part, but if we can sort of seek to keep things in-house and use our expertise of our local employees and council, and empower our staff where possible. I'm not saying that's doable there, but if we can sort of keep that in mind and rely less on outside expertise.
Yeah, it's not an easy job.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's an easy job, but you could just
Yeah.
tip some dirt there and
Yeah.
plant some trees. I don't know.
Yeah. It's
Look,
not that easy.
it's a fair point, and if we could get away with that, then great. But we've got to bring in relevant.
I realise that it's a fine line and there's risk involved, but sometimes take a bit more risk, perhaps.
Yeah, well, it depends. It's a mines department.
Yeah. I'm not sort of picking that.
No.
Just a general thing.
I'm answering it in a general sense that we're judicious in bringing in externals, because they cost a lot, and we also want to empower our staff because we do have some great skills here. Often it's just a sheer reality of the workload that we've got on, where we may have the skills, but we've just got physically too much work to get through. So it's a balancing act, but it's always something that's front of mind for us.
Thank you.
So another one, I just forgot, the 187,000 for solar So that's solar panels, isn't it, largely? Now, is that the grant money or is that different money again?
That's the grant,
Yes.
but we, yep, take you through.
That's our co-contribution to the grant,
Okay, so how much more is the grant on top of that?
50/50, so another 187 from it.
So we're investing 360,000 in upgrading the solar efficiency of the pours and stuff, which in the long term will pay us back dividends. Is
Correct.
my
It's
understanding,
energy efficiency, a big chunk of it is solar.
as well.
Yeah. So
So that's good.
have we got an update on that? Because it did go into caretaker mode, that grant, so.
Yeah, we've been following, we haven't heard anything back, and also worth mentioning that 187, our contribution is the maximum or the cap. So we would only invest in solutions that bring positive return from both financial and environmental perspective.
No, good work.
Yes, councillor?
I have one question. I agree with Councillor Jessup. It's a fine balance doing this type of work, and I think there's lots of really exciting things, like a greater investment in trainees, the housing plan, and the medical centres deficit slowly moving downwards towards a break-even point. But I noticed there's 250,000 allocated for planning with the childcare centre. I was wondering, is that likely to be recouped through the election commitments, or is that still unknown?
It's still an unknown. It's a significant project unknown. Yeah.
So there's a potential that some of that could be recouped, or that could also be
We're-
increased substantially.
We're going to need every dollar we can get to build to the capacity that the community needs.
Sure we do.
So if we can, we will.
But we've got a budget in that start,
Correct.
which is the important thing.
Yep. That's right.
How big do we think that centre will be?
Through you, Mayor, just talking about childcare, the money allocated for early investment, including project concept designs and scoping. Because the other thing we want to make sure is when we go into other tiers of government seeking fundings, grants, we want to make sure we have the confidence that that's the money can deliver the project. So that requires some upfront investment.
Reduce the risk in actually needing to fork out additional.
Well, it reduces the delivery risk is the intent, but also I think we are going into an area where, and I think it's rightful that both federal and state government are signalling that there's going to be better diligence on how they hand out grants. So it's going to put pressure back onto grant recipients to get themselves organised. So there's not you only go back a couple of years and it was just put your hand out and get money and then work out how you're going to deliver something for that amount. It's flipping up its head around and look, it's financially responsible to do the work first, and that does mean we need to pay to plan and then put ourselves in a position where we can be very professional in how we seek funds and then ultimately how we deliver. So we're ready to get going the day we get the money.
Yes, councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a minor thing and a question on other expenses would be page 29 of the report. I see that we spend, for example, $30,000 roundabout for printing and stationery, $42,000 on postage, $17,000 of $15,000 on tire disposal, for example, but only $10,000 on youth programs. So when I look at those figures, I wonder, for example, postage. Is there any way that we can reduce postage costs or the printing stationery? Like all of us have a printed agenda every single meeting. That's a lot of paper, a lot of printing costs. Is there any scope for reducing printing, for example, or postage, or dispose of our tires cheaper, and then increase, for example, youth programs or the Greg Norris Memorial Scholarship, which we discussed at the last meeting, was, is valued at $5,000. If we can get rid of our tires cheaper, we could put more money into the scholarship or into youth programs and the like. Is there, could we make it, for example, could we be asked if we want a printed agenda for our meeting and then individually say, does it make a huge difference? Initiatives like that ultimately might save some paper and some ink.
Definitely. you can say you don't require it, by all means. Tyres is a little bit different. There is that's a set. We don't have a choice there. There's a tyre, it's a stewardship.
Yeah, oh, look, we do. There's a tyre stewardship program which is built in. There is choices, and we already bulk up our tyre disposal. We've done a lot to moderate the cost of tyres. But your point taken broadly in just can we be more efficient in use of materials and dispersals for all these just stuff that people don't see real value out of compared to a youth program. Absolutely, we're looking at those things all the time. I'd love a paperless office. We're not there yet, but it's something that, and I know it's something that, Patty would love to be seeing as well. So I think it's something we're continually looking at, and it is ridiculous when you look at the round numbers, what we spend on some of these things compared to stuff that people actually value, but it is the cost of making the business actually run. On postage, I will say as well that personally I hate getting mail. Like, it's the last mechanism that I want to work with, but we know that many ratepayers, it is their preferred mechanism of hearing from council. So it is something that's going to be with us for quite some time to need to continue to do mail outs, and it's significant cost. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to give you an example, Councillor, we sent out fees and permits recently, and there were only something like 5% were hard copy. A lot have been emailed, just to let you know, but there are, as Lockie has said, that there is a large portion of our community that still prefer to have hard copies, and we do try to limit those. And when they do come in and when we do contact them, we always ask whether we can go to an email facility so that we do reduce those postage costs. They have gone down over the years, and it is something that, as like I said, I'm extremely keen. I've come from an office where 95% was electronic.
Yeah, thank you.
On that point, do we currently offer rates notices, for example, to just be electronic and not a paper version?
Yeah.
I'd love
Good
to
idea,
sign
though.
up. Well, that's what I'd say is a significant thing, but I'd say a lot of people wouldn't know how. No one's going to be proactive in coming into council or calling council on a really busy day to say, I no longer want to receive my paper notice. So it's also how do we make you more proactive in signing up for that?
Maybe as councillors we can encourage people when we're out and about to sign up.
Yeah. I just wanted to confirm, but we do encourage it we provide those options and encourage people to do it on the rates notices, but by the time you pay your rates, you probably don't want to hear any more from council, so you chuck it in the bin.
More and more people are doing digital payments. They're not coming into customer service
Correct.
and returning a rates notice.
And when people do come in to pay, sorry for through you, Mayor, we do ask them if they would like to go electronic, but normally if they're coming in to pay their rates, they want the face-to-face and they want the hard copy.
That's correct. If you go into the post office, you still see the people in there with their bills, paying them over the counter at Australia Post. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yes.
I think this is a lean budget, it's with sensible investment in services and modernisation, steady modernisation. A lot of these things I don't fully understand, but I trust that they're going to be good for efficiency of council into the future. And as our CEO said, future investment in strategic planning, which is something that is really important and high on my agenda.
Thank you. Do I have any other? No? Councillor Arms? Yep.
Just to say, Mayor, thank you, that I think consistently this year, last year, it's nice to be able to, I said it last year, it's nice to be able to see where we're spending money, how much money we're spending on what, and to actually see that it's maintaining a low as balance, which is not easy because nothing else has remained low. But we're still delivering good services to people on a low budget without having to cut anything major, which is really hard to do. and I like the fact that it's quite understandable and easy to read for people as well. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll put that recommendation forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Okay, so we're up to 19.028/25. Recommendation. We're about to move into closed council, and I'd like to thank those in the gallery or those attending at home. The recommendation is that the meeting now be closed to the public at
6:51 p.m.
pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedures Regulations to discuss the following matters: appointment of audit panel independent member and the Local Government Association Tasmania elections for 2025. Do I have a councillor to move a motion to go into closed? Councillor Gibson and a seconder. Councillor Burgess. All those in favour? Thank you. That's all councillors. I wish to advise, in accordance with the Huon Valley Council's audio recording of council meetings policy, recording of the open session of the meeting ceased at
6:50.